The Fox and the Crow. Master Crow sat on a tree, holding a cheese in his beak. Master Fox was attracted by the odor, and tried to attract him thus. "Mr. Crow, good day to you. You are a handsome-looking bird. In truth, if your song is as beautiful as your plumage, you are the phoenix of this forest." Hearing these words, the crow felt great joy, and to demonstrate his beautiful voice, he opened his mouth wide and let drop his prey. The fox seized it and said, "My good sir, know that every flatterer lies at the expense of those who take him seriously. This is a lesson that is worth a cheese, no doubt." The crow, embarrassed and confused, swore, though somewhat later, that he would never be tricked again. This is the end of the story. The Christmas story. The angel Gabriel visited Mary and told her she was going to have a baby called Jesus. The baby would be God's son. Mary told Joseph what Gabriel had told her. They prepared for the arrival of the special baby. Mary and Joseph had to travel to Bethlehem to register in a census. A kind innkeeper in Bethlehem let Mary and Joseph stay in his stable for the night. Baby Jesus was born in the stable. Baby Jesus was born in the stable. The shepherds walked to Bethlehem to visit the baby Jesus. Far away in the east, wise men saw a bright star in the sky. They knew it meant that a new king had been born and followed the star. On the way they came to King Herod's palace. Herod was curious about the new king. He asked the wise men to tell him where the baby was. The wise men reached Bethlehem. They gave Jesus gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. That night, the wise men had a dream warning them not to tell King Herod where Jesus was. They did not return to King Herod's palace. Herod began to search for baby Jesus. He ordered that all baby boys in Bethlehem be killed. Joseph had a dream where an angel told him to take Mary and Jesus to Egypt. Mary and Joseph traveled to Egypt with baby Jesus, and he was safe. This is the end of the story.
Jonah and the big fish. God said to Jonah, "Go to Nineveh." Jonah pretended not to hear God. Jonah ran away from God because he didn't want to do what God was asking. He knew the people of Nineveh were bad. Jonah ran to the sea and got on a boat that was going away from Nineveh. Jonah fell sound asleep on the boat and God sent a storm. The other people on the boat were scared and worried. They knew that God was mad. They woke Jonah up and threw him into the sea. Jonah was swallowed up by a huge fish. While Jonah was inside the fish, he said sorry to God and the fish spat Jonah out. Jonah praised God and listened to him. Once again God said to Jonah, "Go to Nineveh." This time Jonah went and the people of Nineveh listened to him. They also said sorry to God. This is the end.
Rapunzel. Once upon a time, there lived a man and his wife. They lived in a house next door to a witch. The wife longed to eat the lettuces in the witch's beautiful garden. One day, the husband decided to steal some of the lettuces for his wife. The witch caught him. The witch told the husband that his wife was soon to have a baby. He must give the baby to the witch in return for the lettuce. The man was so scared that he agreed. When the little girl was born, the witch took her away and named her Rapunzel. When Rapunzel grew up, the witch locked her away in a tower in the middle of the forest. While Rapunzel lived in the tower, her golden hair grew longer and longer. When the witch visited, she would call to Rapunzel to let down her hair, and the witch would climb up. One day, a handsome prince found the tower in the forest. He watched the witch come to the tower and climb Rapunzel's hair. When the witch had gone, the prince climbed up the tower using Rapunzel's hair. The prince visited Rapunzel every day. When the witch found out, she was angry. The witch made a plan. She cut Rapunzel's hair and sent her off into the forest. The witch tricked the prince and threw him out of the tower. The prince fell on some thorns and scratched his eyes, which made him blind. For a long time, he wandered in the forest. One day, the prince heard Rapunzel singing in the forest. When she saw it was her prince, she cried with happiness. Her tears touched his eyes and he could see again. They lived happily ever after in his kingdom. This is the end of the story. The Lion and the Mouse. A lion lay asleep in the forest, his great head resting on his paws. A timid little mouse came upon him unexpectedly, and in her fright and haste to get away, ran across the lion's nose. Roused from his nap, the lion laid his huge paw angrily on the tiny creature to kill her. "Spare me," begged the poor mouse. "Please let me go and someday I will surely repay you." The lion was amused to think that a mouse could ever help him. But he was generous and finally let the mouse go. Some days later, while stalking his prey in the forest, the lion was caught in a hunter's net. Unable to free himself, he filled the forest with his angry roaring. The mouse knew the voice and quickly found the lion struggling in the net. Running to one of the great ropes that bound him, she knotted until it parted, and soon the lion was free. "You laughed when I said I would repay you," said the mouse. "Now you see that even a mouse can help a lion." This is the end of the story. Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Once upon a time there lived a little girl called Goldilocks. One day, Goldilocks went for a walk in the forest and found a house. She knocked, and when nobody answered, she decided to go inside. At the table, there were 3 bowls of porridge. Goldilocks was hungry. She tasted the porridge from the large bowl. "This porridge is too salty," she said. She tasted the porridge from the medium-sized bowl. "This porridge is too sweet," she said. She tasted the porridge from the small bowl. "This porridge is just right," she said, and she ate it all up. Goldilocks felt tired, so she walked into the living room and saw 3 chairs. She sat in the large chair to rest her feet. "This chair is too big," she said. She sat in the medium-sized chair. "This chair is too big, too," she said. She sat in the small chair. "This chair is just right," she sighed. Just as Goldilocks settled down into the chair to rest, it broke into pieces. By now, Goldilocks was very tired, so she went upstairs to the bedroom. She lay down on the large bed. "This bed is too hard," she said. She lay down on the medium-sized bed. "This bed is too soft," she said. She lay down on the small bed. "This bed is just right," she sighed. She curled up and fell asleep. As she was sleeping, the 3 bears came home. "Someone's been eating my porridge," growled Daddy Bear. "Someone's been eating my porridge," said Mummy Bear. "Someone's been eating my porridge and it's all gone," cried Baby Bear. "Someone's been sitting in my chair," growled Daddy Bear. "Someone's been sitting in my chair," said Mummy Bear. "Someone's been sitting in my chair and it's broken," cried Baby Bear. When they got upstairs to the bedroom, Daddy Bear growled, "Someone's been sleeping on my bed." "Someone's been sleeping on my bed too," said the Mummy Bear. "Someone's been sleeping on my bed too," said the Mummy Bear. Just then Goldilocks woke up and saw the three bears. "Help!" she screamed. Goldilocks ran down the stairs and into the forest. And she never went back into the woods again. This is the end of the story. Pinocchio. Once upon a time, there was an old man named Geppetto. He lived alone and longed for a child. Geppetto made a puppet. He called it Pinocchio. When Geppetto was sleeping, the blue fairy appeared and cast a spell on the puppet. When Geppetto awoke, he found that Pinocchio could speak and move. Geppetto loved and cared for Pinocchio like a son. Pinocchio saw a puppet show and decided to join in. He did so well he was paid 5 bronze coins. Pinocchio met a fox and a cat. They told him if he planted his coins under a magic tree, he would become rich. But they were trying to trick Pinocchio so they could take his money. The blue fairy sent a dog to scare them off. The blue fairy asked Pinocchio why he had not been to school that day. Pinocchio lied and his nose grew. The blue fairy asked Pinocchio where he had put the bronze coins. Pinocchio lied a second time and his nose grew even bigger. The blue fairy told Pinocchio his nose would only shrink when he told the truth. Pinocchio went to the circus with some boys. They ate lots of sweets. The boys began to turn into donkeys. Pinocchio only grew ears and a tail because he was made of wood. He was thrown into the sea and his ears and tail fell off. Pinocchio was swallowed by a huge whale. His father was inside the whale too. They built a raft and escaped. Pinocchio saved his father from a big storm. When they arrived home, the blue fairy waved her wand and turned Pinocchio into a real boy. Pinocchio and Geppetto lived happily ever after. This is the end of the story. The Ugly Duckling. Once upon a time, a mother duck was waiting for her eggs to hatch. The eggs were white, all except one. Soon the eggs began to hatch, and the duck became a proud mother of 5 little ducklings. But one egg remained. Finally, the last duckling hatched. But he was different from the other ducklings. "Why are you different?" "Nobody loves me because I am different." The ugly duckling left home to look for a place he belonged. He came across some other birds, but they did not want to be friends with such an odd-looking duckling. "You look strange. You're ugly." An old woman found the duckling and put him in her hutch. The woman's hen warned the duckling that she planned to eat him. The poor duckling escaped and hid in some reeds. He saw some beautiful birds fly above him, and he wished that he was like them. Winter came and the little duckling was cold. But a farmer found him and kept him safe until the spring. When spring came, the farmer took the duckling to the pond and released him. Something wonderful had happened. The duckling had grown into a beautiful swan. He soon made lots of new friends and was the most beautiful swan of them all. This is the end of the story. The Gingerbread Man. Once upon a time, there lived a little old woman and a little old man. One day, the little old woman made a gingerbread man. When she opened the oven, the gingerbread man jumped off the baking tray and ran out of the house. The little old woman and the little old man ran after the gingerbread man yelling, "Stop! Stop!" Sadly, they could not catch him. The gingerbread man just laughed and said, "Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man." The gingerbread man ran until he came to a cat. "Stop! You look good enough to eat," said the cat. The gingerbread man just laughed and said, "Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man." The gingerbread man ran until he came to a dog. "Stop! You look good enough to eat," said the dog. The gingerbread man just laughed and said, "Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man." The gingerbread man ran on. Then he came to a cockerel. "Stop! You look good enough to eat," said the cockerel. The gingerbread man just laughed and said, "Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man." The gingerbread man ran down the lane and came to a pig. "Stop! You look good enough to eat," said the pig. The gingerbread man just laughed and said, "Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man." A little further on, the gingerbread man came to a cow. "Stop! You look good enough to eat," said the cow. The gingerbread man just laughed and said, "Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man." The gingerbread man ran on. Then he came to a horse. "Stop! You look good enough to eat," said the horse. The gingerbread man just laughed and said, "Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man." It was not long before the gingerbread man came to a boy. "Stop! You look good enough to eat," said the boy. The gingerbread man just laughed and said, "Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man." The gingerbread man kept running and came to a girl. "Stop! You look good enough to eat," said the girl, and she joined in the chase. The gingerbread man ran on until he came to a river. He stopped as he could not swim. Just then, a fox came by. "I can help you cross the river," said the fox. "Just hop onto my tail and I will swim across." The gingerbread man saw the others coming. He knew that if he did not go with the fox, he would be eaten. So he jumped onto his tail. Soon the gingerbread man began to get wet. "Climb onto my back," said the fox, so the gingerbread man did. The water was getting even deeper. This time the fox said, "Jump onto my nose so that you don't get wet." The gingerbread man climbed onto the tip of his nose. Just then, the fox tipped back his head and the gingerbread man flew into the air. The fox opened his mouth and snapped. That was the end of the gingerbread man. This is the end of the story. Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time there was a girl called Little Red Riding Hood. She lived with her mother in a village near a forest. One day, Little Red Riding Hood went to visit her grandmother. She took a basket of food with her. On her way, Little Red Riding Hood met a wolf. "Hello," said the wolf. "Where are you going?" "I'm going to visit my grandmother who lives in the forest," explained Little Red Riding Hood. The wolf ran to her grandmother's house. He went inside and locked her in the wardrobe. He put on her nightgown and got into her bed. A little later, Little Red Riding Hood came to the house. She knocked on the door, then went inside. Little Red Riding Hood went over to grandmother's bed. "Oh, Granny, what big ears you have," she said. "All the better to hear you with," answered the wolf. "Oh, Granny, what big eyes you have," said Little Red Riding Hood. "All the better to see you with," replied the wolf. "Oh, Granny, what big teeth you have," said Little Red Riding Hood. "All the better to eat you with," said the wolf. "Help!" shouted Little Red Riding Hood as she realized that there was a wolf in her grandmother's bed. She ran out of the house. A woodcutter was nearby. He heard Little Red Riding Hood scream and ran to the house. The woodcutter hit the wolf over the head. The wolf ran away and Little Red Riding Hood never saw him again. This is the end of the story. Alice in Wonderland. It was a warm day in summer. Alice was sitting in the sunshine and she was reading a book with her sister. The book was terribly boring and Alice began to feel sleepy. Suddenly, a small, white rabbit raced past. The rabbit was wearing clothes. He pulled a watch from his pocket to check the time. He cried, "Oh dear! Oh no! I'm late! I'm late!" The rabbit shook his head and then disappeared down a rabbit hole. Alice followed the rabbit to the hole. She peered through the entrance, but she could no longer see the rabbit. She squeezed her head and shoulders into the hole. Then, she wriggled her body a little further. Suddenly, Alice felt herself falling. For a long time, she tumbled down the rabbit hole. Finally, she landed with a bump in a long hallway which had a tiny door at the end of it. "I'm far too big to fit through such a little door," Alice said to herself. Nearby, on a three-legged table, she found a small bottle. The bottle had a label on it which read, "Drink me." Alice quickly drank from the bottle. Alice shrank until she was as small as a doll. She opened the door and quickly ran through it. "Oh, I'll never get back to the right size," Alice cried. She began to look for help. Soon, Alice met a green caterpillar who was sitting on top of a large mushroom. The caterpillar explained, "Well, I may be able to help if size is your only problem. One side of this mushroom will make you bigger, but the other side will make you smaller." Alice cut a piece from the left side of the mushroom and she took a small bite. "Thank goodness! I'm growing," she cried. "Which way should I go now?" puzzled Alice. "That path will lead you to the Mad Hatter's tea party," said a cat who was sitting in a tree. Alice walked down the path. She came across a long table which had been set ready for a tea party. "How lovely! A tea party!" she cried. "There's no room for you," shouted the Mad Hatter as Alice arrived. Alice ignored him and sat down anyway. She wanted to have a cup of tea with the March Hare and a sleepy little mouse. After the tea party, Alice continued walking. She found herself in the middle of a field where the Queen of Hearts was playing croquet. "Have you ever played croquet?" asked the Queen of Hearts. "Yes," Alice answered, "but I've never used a flamingo or a hedgehog to do so." "You will play with me and let me win, or I'll chop off your head," ordered the Queen of Hearts. Alice wasn't very good at croquet. "Off with her head," cried the Queen of Hearts. Just then, Alice felt someone touch her shoulder. "Wake up! You've been sleeping," said Alice's sister. "I had a strange dream," said Alice. Alice told her sister all about her adventure. Before long, Alice realized that she hadn't eaten for hours and she ran inside for something to eat. This is the end of the story. Beauty and the Beast. Once upon a time, there lived a merchant who had 3 daughters. The youngest, Beauty, was the most caring and beautiful of the sisters. The family were poor and lived in the country. Beauty's sisters often moaned about not having money, but Beauty never complained. One day, before going to market, the merchant asked what his daughters would like him to bring back. Beauty's sisters asked for beautiful dresses. "All I ask for," said Beauty, "is your safe return and 1 rose." But the merchant didn't sell anything at the market, and on his way home he became lost in a dark forest. He was wandering around for a very long time until he came across a clearing in the forest, in which stood a castle. He decided to take shelter in the castle, so he went inside. He found lots of food and ate it all, and then fell asleep in a chair by the fire. In the morning he left the castle to continue with his journey. As he walked outside he saw a rose bush, so he picked a rose for Beauty. Suddenly, a great beast jumped out from behind the bush, roaring, "How dare you eat all my food, sleep in my home and then steal my roses?" Beauty's dad explained it was for his lovely daughter. The beast agreed to let him go, as long as he sent Beauty back to the castle in his place. Beauty agreed to go, and so she packed her bags and went to live in the castle. The beast treated her with a lot of kindness and they became friends. But Beauty missed her family. The beast had come to love Beauty and didn't want her to be sad. He gave her a magic mirror that would allow her to see her family whenever she looked in it. One day she looked in the mirror and saw that her dad was very poorly. The beast refused to let Beauty go back and look after him, but when he saw how terribly miserable this made her, he let her go. Beauty's dad soon became well and she forgot about the beast. But one night she had a horrible dream that the beast was very ill and about to die. She rushed back to the castle to be by his side. When she returned to the beast, she begged him not die as she had come to love him and wanted to live with him forever. The beast miraculously became well and turned into a handsome prince. He told Beauty that long ago, a curse had been placed upon him by a nasty witch that turned him into a beast. The curse would only be broken when someone truly loved him, which Beauty had done. Soon afterwards, Beauty and the prince were married and lived long and happy lives together. This is the end of the story. The Lion and the Rabbit. There once was a land with abundant grass and water, where many animals lived. Despite the natural resources, the animals were not happy because of the greedy lion that preyed on them. His appetite was insatiable. One day, the animals called a meeting with the lion to try and find a solution to the problem of so many of them being eaten. The animals announced to the lion, "We have a solution that means we will be safe and you will not have to worry about hunting." "Oh yes? What would that be?" asked the lion. The animals answered, "If you stop chasing and frightening us all the time, we will send one of us to you at lunchtime every day." The lion accepted the proposal. The rabbit was the first animal sent to be the lion's lunch. But he was smart and had come up with an idea to save himself as well as get rid of the lion. He told the other animals that he had a plan. The animals asked, "What is your plan, little rabbit?" He answered, "Just let me arrive late for the lion's lunch and leave the rest to me." The animals agreed, hoping to be rid of the lion. The next day the rabbit arrived late. The lion was waiting impatiently. He was hungry and angry, so he snarled at the rabbit, "Why are you late?" The clever rabbit answered him, "I am the messenger for the animals. They sent a different rabbit with me to be your lunch today, but another lion followed me and took it from me. The lion claimed that he was more deserving than you and was more important than you. I ran as fast as I could to you to tell you what happened." The lion roared furiously and said, "Take me to that lion." The rabbit took him to a water well and said to the lion, "This is the place." The lion looked into the well and saw his own reflection in the water. He also saw the reflection of the rabbit in the water. Believing that the reflections were the other lion and rabbit, he jumped into the well to fight the lion. The rabbit ran away, leaving the lion in the well. The rabbit came back and proudly told the other animals what it had done to the greedy lion. The animals were able to live in peace on the land that was abundant with grass and water. This is the end of the story. The Zoo Vet. On Monday, George the giraffe visited the vet. He had a sore throat. The vet gave George some medicine and a scarf to wrap around his neck. Thanks to the vet, the patient soon began to feel much better. On Tuesday, Fatima the flamingo visited the vet. She had a broken wing. The vet bandaged Fatima's wing and put it into a sling. On Wednesday, Cam the chameleon visited the vet. He had a temperature. The vet put a cool flannel on Cam's head and gave him plenty of water to drink. Thanks to the vet, the patient soon began to feel much better. On Thursday, Eric the elephant visited the vet. He had a bad cold. The vet gave Eric a big hanky and a hot water bottle. Thanks to the vet, the patient soon began to feel much better. On Friday, Tori the tiger visited the vet. She had a thorn stuck in her paw. The vet pulled the thorn out of Tori's paw and wrapped it in a bandage. Thanks to the vet, the patient soon began to feel much better. Oh no! On Saturday, it was the vet who was feeling poorly. On Sunday, he put some cream on his spots and got plenty of rest, and soon began to feel much better. This is the end of the story. The Little Mermaid. Long ago there lived a sea king in a coral palace at the bottom of the sea. He had 6 mermaid daughters. While 5 of them were happy, his youngest daughter Ariel wasn't very happy. Ariel loved going up to the surface of the water. She would often swim up to see the blue sky and the green trees on the land. The beautiful fish and pretty shells didn't seem to make her smile. Even stories told by her father failed to make her happy. One night, Ariel secretly left her home and made her way to the surface. In the stormy night, the waves crashed wildly against the rocks. The lightning threw light on a ship rolling and pitching at sea. Beside the ship, a young man was signaling for help. Ariel immediately saw him and swam to rescue him. She brought him to the shore and rested him gently against a rock. This young man made her smile. A beautiful young girl approached, so Ariel left the surface and headed back to the sea palace. The first thing the young man saw when he opened his eyes was the beautiful girl. He was very happy as he thought she was the one who rescued him. The beautiful girl was a princess. Ariel always thought of the young man. One day she visited Ursula the witch and asked her to grant her a wish. She wanted to go to the surface and visit the land. The witch listened, stirring her potion while chanting. The witch agreed to grant her the wish under one condition. Ariel will be able to walk and dance, but not talk or sing, losing the power of her speech. Ariel agreed and was soon granted her wish. Once her wish was granted, Ariel made her way to the royal palace, hoping the prince would remember her. A grand ball was being held in the palace. Not knowing Ariel, the palace guards refused to let her inside. Listening to the music coming from the palace, Ariel started dancing merrily. Seeing her beautiful dance, the guards allowed her to enter the palace. There were beautiful bright lamps lit and the air was filled with music and laughter. Ariel finally found the prince, sitting on his throne. Beside him sat a beautiful princess. The prince did not realize that Ariel was the one who rescued him. The prince announced the princess as his future bride and princess of the kingdom. That announcement left Ariel in tears. She ran out of the palace back to the sea and suddenly realized that it didn't matter that the prince had found his princess. She could, in fact, be happy surrounded by beautiful fish, pretty shells, and listening to her father's stories. This is the end of the story. Thumbelina. Once upon a time, there lived a lonely old woman who longed for a daughter. The years had gone by and her dream had never come true. One day, sad and desperate, she decided to visit a good witch. The witch took pity on her and gave her a tiny seed. Plant this in a flower pot and you will have your wish. The woman did as she was told, and after 1 week, a beautiful flower grew. In the center of the flower was a tiny child with golden hair. The old lady was delighted and picked the little girl up and gave her a tiny hug. "I will call you Thumbelina," said the lady, "for you are no bigger than my thumb." Thumbelina and the old lady lived happily for many years. The girl slept in a bed made from a walnut shell. She loved the old woman very much. One night, when the old lady was asleep, a giant toad hopped through an open window and kidnapped Thumbelina. "You are a pretty little creature," said the toad. "You will make the perfect bride for my handsome son." When they reached the toad's pond, she set Thumbelina down before her son. Thumbelina began to cry. He was scary, slimy, and covered in warts. Thumbelina just wanted to go home. The next day, while the two toads were making wedding arrangements, they left Thumbelina on a lily pad in the middle of the pond. Some fish heard her sobbing and nibbled through the lily pad's stem to set her free. Thumbelina floated down the stream for a long time, past woods and fields of flowers. She was happy to be free of the toads, but she was scared she would never find her way back home. Suddenly a beetle swooped down and grabbed Thumbelina by the waist. He flew her into a tree, saying, "You don't look much like a beetle, but you are very pretty." The beetle's friends came to see Thumbelina, but they weren't very pleased with her. "Look how ugly she is," they said. "She only has 2 legs, and where are her feelers?" The beetle did not want to be seen with her after this, so he placed Thumbelina on a daisy in the forest and left her there. Thumbelina wept for hours. "I am so ugly, not even the beetle wants me," she thought. Thumbelina lived for a long time in the forest. She made a blanket out of leaves and sheltered herself from the rain under a plant. The weather began to turn and winter came. Thumbelina became very cold and the plants around her shriveled and died. A field mouse found her shivering and took her into her warm house for the winter. Thumbelina helped with the cleaning and told the mouse stories, and they lived very happily together. One day the field mouse told Thumbelina she was expecting a visit from her neighbor, the mole. "He is very rich and has a much larger house than mine. If he will take you for his wife, you would be very well looked after." When the mole visited, he could not see Thumbelina as he was blind, but he was enchanted by the sound of her beautiful voice. For many weeks Thumbelina visited the mole in his tunnel to keep him company. She told him stories of the flowers and the sun, but he did not like the outside world. He liked to be in his dark, damp tunnels underground. One day when they were walking, they came across a bird who had fallen freezing through the ground into the tunnel. Thumbelina was sad for the bird and nursed it back to health. The bird was a beautiful swallow. When spring came and the swallow was fully healed, he thanked Thumbelina for saving him. "Come with me," he said. "I will fly you out of this dark hole into the sunshine." Thumbelina sadly refused the bird. She didn't want to leave the field mouse without saying goodbye. The mole, who had grown very fond of Thumbelina, asked her to marry him. Too scared to refuse, she accepted. The mouse and the mole began to prepare for the wedding. On the eve of her wedding, Thumbelina went outside one last time to say goodbye to the outside world. She was sat sobbing when she heard a tweet, tweet from above. It was the swallow, and he had come to fly her away. The bird carried her far away to a beautiful meadow. Thumbelina asked to be placed on a lovely white flower. The bird flew her down and placed her on one of the flower's large white petals. Thumbelina gasped. There in the middle of the flower there stood a handsome young man, the same size as her. The tiny man was in fact the prince of the flower fairies. The prince and Thumbelina fell in love. He asked her to be his wife, and they were married and lived happily ever after. This is the end of the story. The Frog Prince. There was once an evil fairy who turned a prince into a frog. The fairy placed the frog into a well. One day a beautiful princess was playing near the well with her golden ball. The ball fell into the well with a splash. The princess pleaded with the frog to return her ball. The frog fetched the ball for the princess. The princess took the ball and ran back to the palace without the frog. The princess told her father what had happened. He warned her to keep the promises she had made. So the princess let the frog eat from her plate and sleep in her bed. After the third night, the princess awoke to find a handsome prince standing there. The prince and the princess were married and lived happily ever after. This is the end of the story. Aladdin. Once upon a time there lived a poor widow woman and her son Aladdin. One day Aladdin met a mysterious stranger who claimed to be his long-lost uncle. Aladdin ran home and told his mother. The man said he would help make Aladdin rich. The next day the uncle took Aladdin into the desert. They traveled a long way until they reached the foot of a mountain. The man claiming to be Aladdin's uncle was actually a magician in disguise. He lit a fire and said some magic words, and in a puff of smoke a door to a cave in the mountain appeared. The opening was just large enough for the boy to fit through, but it was much too small for the magician. The magician sent Aladdin into the cave. "Do not touch anything," said the magician, "only bring me the lamp." Aladdin entered the cave. On the floor he found a ring, and despite the magician's orders, he picked it up and placed it on his finger. Deep in the cave, Aladdin found the lamp. Aladdin took the lamp back to the magician. "Hand me the lamp," ordered the magician. Aladdin realized it was a trick and that the magician meant to trap him. "I will only give you the lamp once I am out of the cave," he cried. The magician was angry and blocked the cave entrance with a boulder, trapping Aladdin inside. Aladdin rubbed the ring on his finger, and to his surprise a genie appeared. "Master, your wish is my command," he said. Aladdin wished to go home, and soon he was back with his mother. Aladdin's mother told him to sell the lamp so they could buy some food. As Aladdin was polishing the lamp to get it ready for sale, a powerful genie appeared. "Master, your wish is my command," he said. Aladdin wished for a feast for himself and his mother. Aladdin used the magic of the lamp to become rich and powerful. He married the daughter of the Sultan, and they lived in a grand palace. One day the magician heard the story of Aladdin and visited the palace to find the lamp. The magician tricked Aladdin's wife into swapping the old lamp for a new one. With the power of the lamp, the magician transported the palace and the princess to a faraway land. When Aladdin returned, he found the palace gone, but he used the genie in the ring to take him to his wife. Aladdin and the princess took back the magic lamp and banished the magician from the realm. Aladdin asked the genie to move the palace back to their home, and they lived happily ever after. This is the end of the story. The Three Little Pigs. Once upon a time, there were 3 little pigs. Each little pig wanted to build his own house. One built his house out of straw. The third little pig built his house out of bricks. Another pig built his house out of sticks. The next day, a big bad wolf came to the first house. Little pig, let me in," he snarled. "Not by the hair on my chin," cried the first little pig. "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down," growled the big bad wolf. Then he blew the house down. The first little pig ran to the second little pig's house. Then the big bad wolf came to the second house. Little pig, let me in," he snarled. "Not by the hair on my chin," cried the second little pig. "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down," growled the big bad wolf. Then he blew the house down. The first and second little pigs ran to the third little pig's house. Then the big bad wolf came to the third house. Little pig, let me in," he snarled. "Not by the hair on my chin," cried the third little pig. "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down," growled the big bad wolf. He huffed and he puffed, but he couldn't blow the house down. The big bad wolf was so angry that he climbed down the chimney and landed in a big pot of stew. Splash! He jumped out and ran away. The big bad wolf never came back. The three little pigs lived happily ever after in the house made of bricks. This is the end of the story. Charlie the Firefighter. Tulip class were all listening eagerly, waiting for Mr. Clark to tell them the big news. "Next week," said Mr. Clark, "we are going on a very special trip to the fire station. We will meet someone called Charlie, who will tell us all about being a firefighter." All week, the children were buzzing with excitement. "I can't wait to meet Charlie," said Dylan. "I bet he's so cool." "I think he'll be really strong," said Medina. "I'm going to tell him that I want to be a firefighter too," said Teo. Finally, Monday arrived and it was time to go to the fire station and meet Charlie. Tulip class lined up with their partners and made their way to the bus. Billy and Amari sat together, talking about what they thought might happen at the fire station. "I hope Charlie lets me ride in the fire engine," said Billy. "I really hope he shows us how to use the hose," said Amari. When they arrived, Mr. Clark led the children off the bus and into the fire station. "This is Charlie," said Mr. Clark. Charlie stood in front of them and waved. "Look at his awesome uniform," said David. Charlie pulled off her helmet. "Hi, Tulip class," she said. "It's so good to meet you. I'm Charlie and I'm a firefighter. Does anyone know what a firefighter does?" "You put out fires," said Grace. "You help people in emergencies," said Aisha. "You rescue kittens from trees," said Kai. Charlie smiled. "Firefighters are part of the emergency services and we help keep people safe. If there is a fire, you can call us and we will come to rescue people and put the fire out. Sometimes, we rescue animals too." "Is it hard?" asked Danny. Charlie thought for a moment. "Being a firefighter can be hard," said Charlie. "Fires are dangerous, so I have to be very brave. I also have to keep fit to make sure I am strong enough to do the job. But the thing that every firefighter needs most is a great team. It's the other firefighters that help me do my job, even when it's hard." "Now, who wants to see the fire engine?" asked Charlie. They headed out behind the fire station to find a big, bright red fire engine. "Wow," said Billy. "It's amazing. If you'd like to get in, then I need to see some great teamwork," said Charlie. "Are you ready to take turns?" Tulip class lined up in pairs and waited patiently until everyone had been inside. Mr. Clark took lots of photographs of the children sat behind the steering wheel. "I'm just like a real firefighter," said Medina. "Can I have a volunteer to use the hose?" asked Charlie. A sea of hands shot up and Charlie chose Amari first. "It's very powerful," said Charlie. "Hold on tight and we'll do it together. Let's see if the water will reach that building." The hose came to life and a huge jet of water shot forwards, covering the wall. "Good job," said Charlie. You would make a super firefighter. After everyone had used the hose, they headed back into the fire station to learn more about all of the equipment. Charlie's amazing, said Dylan. She's even cooler than I imagined. I hope I can be as good a firefighter as Charlie when I'm older, said Teo. She's incredible, said Medina. I'm going to be a brave, strong firefighter when I grow up too. I'll be in your team, said Annie. As the class got ready to leave, Aisha walked over to join Charlie. Charlie, should I be a firefighter when I grow up? She asked. You should be whatever you want to be, said Charlie. The best thing you can be is yourself. This is the end of the story. The Boy Who Cried Wolf. There was once a boy who looked after sheep. The boy was bored. One day, he played a trick on the villagers. The boy cried out that there was a wolf attacking his sheep, even though there wasn't. The villagers came up the hill to save the sheep. When they got there was no wolf. The boy laughed at them. You must not tell lies, said the villagers. They went back to the village. Soon the boy was bored again. He shouted, Wolf! Wolf! The villagers rushed up the hill to save the sheep. When they got there was no wolf again. The boy laughed at them again. You must not tell lies, shouted the villagers. They went back down to the village. Later that day, a wolf did come into the field. The boy shouted and shouted, Wolf! Wolf! This time no one came to help, and the wolf ate all of the sheep. The moral of the story is, if you tell lies, people won't believe you when you do tell the truth. This is the end of the story. The Emperor's New Clothes. Once upon a time there was an emperor who loved clothes. He loved them so much that he owned hundreds of different outfits and was always looking for new clothes to add to this collection. One day, two strangers arrived at the emperor's palace. We can make you the most beautiful clothes in the world. You will be the envy of the whole kingdom, they said. The emperor was always searching for the next trend. You shall make me these beautiful clothes, he ordered. For weeks and weeks the two men worked on the clothes and wouldn't let anybody see what they were doing. The emperor grew impatient. He called the strangers to the palace and demanded they show him the clothes. Where are the new clothes I have paid you to make? He said. They are right here, Your Majesty, said the first stranger. What do you think, aren't they splendid? The emperor was baffled, he couldn't see anything. These clothes are so special and rare that only the cleverest people can see them. They are too fine and elegant to be seen by fools or ignorant people, said the second stranger. Of course, said the emperor quickly, as he does not want to seem foolish or ignorant. They are beautiful. The finest clothes I have ever seen, said the emperor. As you can see, they are not quite finished yet, said the strangers. If you would pay us some more money, we could finish them in time for the big parade. The emperor promised to pay the men whatever they wanted if they would have the new clothes ready in time for the parade. He wanted everybody in the kingdom to see them. The day of the big parade came and the two strangers presented the emperor with his new clothes. Everyone will admire you, Your Majesty. Your new clothes look wonderful, said the strangers. Word had got out about the magical new clothes. Nobody in the palace wanted to seem foolish or ignorant, so they all complimented the emperor. How beautiful! What colors! What style! When it was time for parade, the emperor marched out of his palace and onto the street. Crowds of people had gathered to see the emperor's new clothes. What a lovely outfit! Doesn't the emperor look smart in his new clothes? They all said. Suddenly, a little voice from the crowd cried out, "The emperor's got nothing on. He's naked." The crowd went silent and the parade stopped. Suddenly, everyone started laughing. "The little boy is right," they said. "The emperor hasn't got any clothes on." Realizing he was naked, the emperor blushed, but he continued to march through the streets. He was too proud to admit he had been fooled. This is the end of the story. The Bear Who Came to Babysit. Arno and Bibi were helping Mom and Mike to pack for their honeymoon. Mom checked her list. Clothes, toothbrush, tickets. "We just need the babysitter to arrive," she said. "We've found you the perfect one," said Mike with a wink. "You're going to have a great time. You'll barely notice we're gone." But little did the children know, the babysitter was a great, big bear. "Be on your best behavior," said Mom. "We'll be back in a few days." "Grr," growled the bear. The children stood speechless, staring at their new babysitter. Arno turned to his sister. "Is this really happening?" he asked. "Whoever heard of a bear babysitter?" shrugged Bibi. That night, the bear ran a bath. "Don't forget the bubbles," said Bibi, handing the bear the bottle. The bear squeezed it very hard. "This is fun," giggled the children. The next morning, Bibi and Arno sat down at the table. "I wonder what's for breakfast," said Arno. The bear gave them each some extremely sticky honey. "This is delicious," chuckled the children. "Grr," growled the bear. After breakfast, it was time to go to school. Arno and Bibi hopped into the car and buckled their seat belts as the bear squeezed into the driver's seat. Screech! Went the brakes. "Wee!" said the children. "Grr!" growled the bear. That night, the bear tucked the children into bed. They snuggled up to listen to a bedtime story. "Good night," whispered Arno. "Good night," whispered Bibi. "Grr!" growled the bear. The next day was Saturday, so the children slept late. Meanwhile, the bear did some laundry, then hung it on the line. "Good morning," called the neighbor. "Grr!" growled the bear. When the children finally woke up, the bear was busy washing the dishes. "Good morning, bear," shouted Bibi as they both raced downstairs. "How did you sleep?" "Yuck," said the children. This was not how Mom and Mike usually did the dishes. In fact, the bear hadn't done anything the way that Mom and Mike usually did. "They won't let you babysit again if they see all this mess," cried Arno. "Grr!" growled the bear. They rushed to gather the clothes from the line and placed them in the washing machine. They whizzed around the kitchen until the dishes were spotless and the sticky breakfast mess was all cleaned up. They sped through the upstairs rooms, mopping up the bathroom and tidying the bedroom. Arno hastily patched up the curtains, while Bibi and the bear hurriedly painted the car, finishing just as Mom and Mike arrived home. "Well, you both look happy," said Mike. "And the house looks very tidy," said Mom. "Have you all had fun?" "Yes," shouted the children. "Grr," growled the bear. After the bear had gone, Mom asked the children, "Would you like your new friend to babysit again one day?" "Grr," growled the bear. This is the end of the story. Sleeping Beauty. Once upon a time, there lived a king and queen. After many years of longing for a child, the queen gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. The king threw a big party and invited some fairies. The fairies brought gifts for the baby. A wicked fairy arrived at the party, angry that he wasn't invited. The wicked fairy placed a curse on the baby. He said, when the princess reaches her 16th birthday, she will prick her finger on a spindle and die. One of the fairies used magic to soften the curse. She said, the princess will not die, but instead fall into a deep sleep for 100 years. The king banned all spinning wheels from the kingdom. When the princess turned 16, she found an old woman spinning. She had never seen a spinning wheel before and became curious. The princess pricked her finger and fell to the floor in a deep, deep sleep. The king and queen found the princess and put her to bed. Soon, everyone else in the castle fell into a deep sleep. Many years passed and a forest of trees, brambles, and thorns grew around the palace. After 100 years, a handsome prince found the castle hidden in the thorns and trees. The prince entered the castle and found the sleeping princess. She was beautiful. The prince kissed the sleeping princess and she awoke. The rest of the palace woke up and they all lived happily ever after. This is the end of the story. The Red Dragon. A long time ago, a red dragon lived in the Cambrian Mountains. This was a quiet, lovely place, full of magic. He was a lovely dragon. He looked after the people who lived in this area and everyone loved him very much. One day, a white dragon flew into this beautiful area. This dragon was not so nice. The red dragon had been asleep in his cave. When he woke, he looked out of the cave and saw the white dragon flying through the air. The white dragon felt that he owned this place, but the red dragon loved this area very much and was going to protect it at all costs. The two dragons rose to the air and started fighting with all their strength. The flames and the smoke from the two dragons could be seen across the whole country and a deafening noise filled the air. The people were scared. The fighting of the dragons caused the ground to dry up and crack. The king at the time was King Lud. He didn't know what to do. He decided to go to France where his brother, Leafles, was king. He would surely know what he could do to help. The two brothers spoke for hours. Leafles agreed that it would not be possible for the red dragon to win against the white dragon, but then he had an idea. When King Lud came home, he told his men to dig a deep pit and fill it with mead. The dragons, exhausted from their fighting, fell into the pit. They drank the mead and fell asleep heavily. Soldiers bound the two dragons and carried them away to a place called Dinas Emrys in Snowdonia. They put the dragons in a chest made of stone and buried them in a dark cave underground. The dragons were quiet for years. Years later, Vortigern, king of Gwynedd, came to Dinas Emrys to build a tower. Every night, his tower would collapse. Vortigern didn't know what to do, so he asked his wizards for help. The wizards told King Vortigern that he must find a boy to sacrifice. Vortigern's men traveled a long way in search of a boy. They found him in a place called Carmarthen, in West Wales. He lived with his mother and his name was Merlin. Merlin was a wise and clever boy. He knew what King Vortigern's plan was. Merlin said he knew why the king couldn't build a tower at Dinas Emrys and suggested that the king should ask his wizards to tell him what lived in a cave deep in the ground beneath them. Vortigern sent his men down to the cave to see if Merlin's story was true. They found a chest made of stone. When they opened the chest, they saw the two dragons sleeping side by side. As soon as the chest was opened, the two dragons flew out and started fighting again. The red dragon finally defeated the white dragon and there was peace again. This is the end of the story. The undersea cleaning spree. The sea is such a wondrous place with forests, reefs and caves. There are countless creatures living in a world beneath the waves. The water is their haven, it's the only home they know, while the up is somewhere unexplored, where most will never go. One night, when Blub the octopus was sleeping in her bed, she was woken by a stranger, who had landed on her head. "Hello," said Blub. "You must be new. I've not seen you around." But the fish refused to answer her, it didn't make a sound. As days went by, more strangers came who also didn't talk. They were drifting down but didn't seem to scuttle, swim, or walk. It wasn't long before they started getting in the way, causing harm to all the creatures as they tried to swim and play. Blub wanted to be friendly, so she greeted those she found, but a manta ray called Manti swam up next to her and frowned. "Whoever are you talking to?" she asked. "There's no one there." "It's these fish," said Blub. "They're new here, but they only sit and stare." "These things aren't fish," said Manti. "They've just fallen from the up. They are human things with silly names like bottle, bag, and cup. But don't the humans need them?" wondered Blub, a bit confused, and they hatched a plan to send them back to where they could be used. The up was quite a scary place, but Blub was feeling brave, so she swam towards the surface, where she bobbed upon a wave. She then began to throw things, first with one arm, then with 8. Having lots of arms for throwing was a really useful trait. "Let's dive back down," said Manti, "and collect up even more." So they gathered lots of objects and returned them to the shore. It wasn't long till other creatures started cleaning too, from across the seas and oceans, from the Arctic to Peru. The creatures threw some items, then some others, then some more, and created many massive piles of rubbish on the shore. The humans moaned and grumbled as the clutter clogged their space. "We should throw it back to sea," said one. "This mess is a disgrace." A little boy saw Blub and all the creatures in the bay. "It's not fair," he said. "If we don't want this rubbish, why would they?" He stood upon a rock and then began to make a speech. "We should really find a better way to tidy up the beach." The people soon took action as his plea was understood, and they sorted all the rubbish to reuse the bits they could. They quickly worked together till the beach was litter-free, so the things no longer needed wouldn't end up in the sea. When all the waste had gone, the humans gathered by the shore, and they promised that the things they used would harm the sea no more. They tried to use less plastic and, instead, did all they could to use eco-friendly objects made from glass, bamboo, and wood. The creatures smiled and cheered because the ocean was now clean. It was safer and much nicer when their home was so pristine. The water is their haven, it's the only home they know, and the up's now full of people who protect what's down below. This is the end of the story. Sparks in the sky. It was early evening and Bo was very excited. She was going to her first bonfire night celebration with Mom, Dad, Gran, and her big brother, Leo. Everyone put on their soft woolly hats and thick cozy scarves. As they entered the park, Bo could see the bonfire from high up on her dad's shoulders. It didn't look how she imagined it, though. They'll light it later, when it gets dark, Dad explained. Once they had walked through the gates, Bo could smell the delicious, smoky scent of barbecue in the air. Everyone's tummies were rumbling loudly. "Can we get a hot dog, Mom? Please?" Bo asked eagerly. Leo took a bite of his hot dog and a large splodge of ketchup dripped down and splattered on his favorite trainers. He looked even grumpier than usual. After they'd finished their hot dogs, it was time for the fairground rides. Everything was so colorful and noisy. Bo couldn't decide what to go on first. Leo wanted to ride the roller coaster, but Bo grabbed his hand and dragged him towards the carousel. Bo grinned and chose the golden horse with the silver saddle, and Leo helped her to climb on. Everyone gathered around the bonfire as the guy was placed on top and the fire was lit. Slowly, the fire began to grow, making the wood crackle and spit. Small sparks rose gently into the air and disappeared. Bo could feel the heat from the fire on her cheeks. Mom bought sparklers and told Leo and Bo to put their gloves on. Carefully, Mom lit the sparklers. Bo twirled her hand excitedly, making swirling patterns in the air and writing her name. It was so much fun watching the golden sparkles appear and then disappear. Bo looked at Leo and noticed his sparkler hadn't lit. Once her sparkler was finished, she placed it into the bucket of sand and asked Mom for a new one. She handed it to Leo and asked Mom to light it. Leo twirled his sparkler slowly and Bo thought she almost saw him smile. Finally, it was time to see some fireworks. Bo watched as the Catherine wheel was nailed to a wooden post. Once lit, it twinkled and flickered as it spun faster and faster, becoming a dazzling blur. Everyone waited as the rockets were lit, one at a time. The man made sure to stand well back between lighting each one. The rockets raced into the air and erupted with a bang in a shower of sparks. The best fireworks had been saved for the finale. They shot up into the air, exploding one after the other. Some crackled, some crashed loudly, while others popped. The sparks shot in all directions, painting multicolored patterns on the night sky. Bo looked at Leo. He was staring up at the fireworks, and she saw that he was finally smiling. She gently took his hand and they stood together as the last firework dashed into the sky with a whoosh. "I love bonfire night," said Bo giddily. "Can we do this every day?" "I'm afraid you'll have to wait until the 5th of November next year," said Leo, chuckling as they walked home. Bo is excited to see her first fireworks. They shot up into the air, exploding one after the other. Join Bo as she enjoys the sights, sounds and smells of bonfire night with her big brother, Leo. A heartwarming tale to celebrate this magical night. This is the end of the story. Cinderella. Once upon a time there lived a beautiful girl called Cinderella. Cinderella lived with two ugly sisters and her wicked stepmother. They were very unkind to Cinderella and made her do a lot of hard work. One day, an invitation came from the palace that invited everyone to the prince's ball. The wicked stepmother didn't allow Cinderella to go. The day of the ball arrived and Cinderella was left at the house. "I do wish I could go to the ball," she said. Just then, a lovely old lady with a gold wand in her hand appeared in the room. "I am your fairy godmother and you shall go to the ball," she said. The fairy godmother asked Cinderella to find her a pumpkin, 6 mice, a rat, and 6 lizards. With the touch of her wand, the fairy godmother turned the pumpkin into a magnificent coach, the mice into 6 magnificent horses, the rat into a coachman, and the lizards into 6 footmen. Then the fairy godmother touched Cinderella with her wand. Cinderella's old dress turned into a beautiful gown and on her feet were the prettiest glass slippers. "Remember, you must leave the ball before the clock strikes 12, said the fairy godmother. Cinderella arrived at the ball. She looked so beautiful that everyone wondered who she was. The prince asked Cinderella to dance and they danced together all night. Cinderella was enjoying herself so much that she didn't notice the time. Midnight approached and the clock began to strike. Cinderella ran out of the palace. As she ran down the stairs, one of her glass slippers fell off. The prince ran after her, but he was too late. He found her glass slipper on the steps. The next morning, the prince went from house to house with the glass slipper. At last the prince came to Cinderella's house. The first ugly sister tried on the slipper, but her foot was too wide. The second ugly sister tried on the slipper, but her foot was too long. "Please may I try on the slipper?" asked Cinderella. The slipper fit perfectly. The prince asked Cinderella to marry him. They both lived happily ever after. This is the end of the story. The Nutcracker. It was Christmas Eve and Clara was staring through the downstairs window. It was getting dark, but she could still see the snow outside. It had been falling all day and now the forests and hills were covered in a thick white blanket. She turned, smiling, and watched as all the party guests danced and mingled around her. Christmas cheer filled the great house and she found herself moving to the sound of the music. The smell of pine and cinnamon drifted past her nose and she peered towards the huge Christmas tree. At the bottom lay dozens of presents wrapped in glittery paper and ribbons. Clara felt a shiver of excitement. "He'll be here soon," she whispered to herself, turning back to the window. Just then, there was a loud knock at the door and Clara rushed to open it. Standing in the doorway was a mysterious-looking man hidden behind a black cape. "Clara!" the strange man yelled. "Uncle!" Clara shrieked, throwing her arms around him. "You came." "Of course I did," the man said. "It's Christmas Eve. I wouldn't miss this for the world." Before he could say any more, Clara's brother, Fritz, appeared from nowhere. "Uncle Drosselmeyer," he shouted. "Have you got me a present?" "Fritz! Don't be so rude," Clara said, frowning at her brother. "It's okay," Clara's uncle laughed, taking off his coat. I've got them right here. Clara and Fritz watched keenly as their uncle handed two beautifully decorated presents from behind his back. "Merry Christmas," he said. Fritz rushed off without so much as a thank you, but Clara stood gazing at the exciting silver-wrapped gift. "Oh, Uncle," she smiled, "what can it be?" "Something rather special," he whispered, "for a rather special niece." "Why don't you open it?" It was tradition for presents to be opened on Christmas Eve in Clara's house, so she carefully peeled away the silver paper. It was a Nutcracker doll. "Uncle," she gasped. "He's beautiful." The doll was dressed in a soldier's uniform, with red trousers and a green jacket. His boots were polished black, and he wore a smart hat on his head. She gazed up at her uncle. "Thank you," she said, and gave him a huge hug. A little later on, Clara was playing with her new Nutcracker by the Christmas tree. "What's that?" said Fritz, peering over his sister's shoulder. "It's a Nutcracker," Clara replied. "Isn't he wonderful?" Fritz bent forward and snatched Clara's present away. "What's so wonderful about this silly toy?" he sneered. "Hey!" Clara shouted. "Give him back." She jumped up and grabbed the Nutcracker. "Why should I?" Fritz sniggered. He pulled hard and the Nutcracker fell to the ground with a smash. "No!" Clara cried, sinking to her knees. She cradled the broken soldier in her arms and wept. "Whatever is the matter?" said a deep, calming voice. Clara peered up. Fritz had run away, and in his place stood her uncle. "He's hurt," Clara sobbed, handing him the Nutcracker. "Goodness me, so he is," her uncle nodded, rolling the toy around in his hands. "Now, let me see." He turned away from Clara and did something to the Nutcracker that she couldn't see. Then he turned around again and handed the toy back. He's better," squealed Clara. "Not quite," her uncle said. "Place him under the Christmas tree, and let him rest until morning." That night, Clara couldn't get to sleep. She kept thinking about her Nutcracker. After a lot of tossing and turning, she decided to go downstairs and check to see if he was all right. There he was, just as Clara had left him, lying under the tree. She hugged him, put him back and curled up on the sofa. Soon, she was fast asleep. Dong! Clara woke to the sound of the grandfather clock. It was midnight. She peered around as candlelight flickered amber shadows across the grand room. Outside, she could see the snow falling gently. Everything was quiet and still. Suddenly, she felt rather strange. The room began to spin and a loud noise began scratching from the walls. The Christmas tree began to grow. The sofa began to grow. Clara held her head. She felt really dizzy. When she looked up, everything was much bigger than it used to be. Then she realized what had happened. Things weren't bigger, she had got smaller. Clara turned to the presents by the Christmas tree. There, standing as tall as her, was the Nutcracker. "Good evening, Clara," the Nutcracker said. "Wah!" Clara squealed, jumping back. "Please, don't be frightened," the proud-looking soldier said. "I'm here to save you." Save me?" Clara gasped. "From who?" "From them," the Nutcracker shouted, drawing his sword. All of a sudden, an army of kitchen mice sprang out from the holes in the walls. "Ah!" shrieked Clara, as the mice sprinted towards them with evil-looking eyes. "Stand back," the Nutcracker ordered and blew on his whistle. From behind them, a troop of soldiers rushed forwards with guns and cannons at the ready. They fired bits of old cheese and rotten fruit at the mice and charged at them with their swords. An incredible battle commenced. Clara hid under the Christmas tree and watched as the soldiers drove the mice back. Then she heard a growl from behind her. She spun round to see two red eyes shining in the dark. "Who are you?" Clara whimpered. An enormous rodent shuffled from the shadows. "I am the Mouse King," the creature snarled, and he lunged at Clara with his sword. Clang! Out of nowhere, the Nutcracker's sword clashed against the Mouse King's, saving Clara just in time. "Get behind me!" he shouted. Clara did as he said and watched as the Mouse King charged forwards again. Clang! Clash! Swish! The Nutcracker was an excellent swordsman, but so was the Mouse King. The evil rodent got a lucky hit and sent the Nutcracker's weapon flying through the air. "No!" screamed Clara, seeing that her hero was now defenseless. The Mouse King scampered forwards with his sword held high. Clara had to act fast. Without thinking, she took off her shoe and threw it at the evil mouse. Whack! It hit him right on the head. The Mouse King fell crashing to the floor. Suddenly, the other mice stopped fighting. Seeing that their leader was now defeated, they scampered away. "Hooray!" cheered the soldiers. "You saved us." "I did," Clara said. "Why, yes," the Nutcracker mumbled. It looked like he was in pain. He squeezed his side and fell to the floor. "Nutcracker!" cried Clara. "No!" screamed Clara, seeing that her hero was now defenseless. The Mouse King scampered forwards with his sword held high. Clara had to act fast. Without thinking, she took off her shoe and threw it at the evil mouse. Whack! It hit him right on the head. The Mouse King fell crashing to the floor. Suddenly, the other mice stopped fighting. Seeing that their leader was now defeated, they scampered away. "Hooray!" cheered the soldiers. "You saved us." "I did," Clara said. "Why, yes," the Nutcracker mumbled. It looked like he was in pain. He squeezed his side and fell to the floor. "Nutcracker!" cried Clara. Just then, a strange noise filled the air and Clara's uncle appeared from nowhere. "Uncle," she gasped. "Hello, Clara," he said in a deep, calm voice. "It seems that your Nutcracker hasn't quite mended. Now, let me see." He turned and bent over the Nutcracker like last time. When he stood up, the toy soldier was better again. Only this time, there was something different about him. "Clara," her uncle smiled, "let me introduce the Nutcracker Prince." "Nutcracker Prince?" Clara said. "At your service," bowed the prince. "Allow me to thank you for saving me." He held out his hand and led Clara to a sleigh behind the Christmas tree. "Sit tight," the prince said, with a wink. Magical reindeer pulled them through the house and out of an open window. Before she knew it, Clara was flying through the night sky amongst all the falling snow and twinkling stars. "Yippee!" she giggled. "Where are we going?" "The land of sweets." The prince laughed. On their way, they stopped off in a snow-covered pine forest to visit the Ice Queen. The queen was so excited to see Clara and the Nutcracker Prince, she put on a grand ball full of snowflake ballerinas and wonderful music. The ballerinas were dressed in beautiful silver dresses, and Clara loved watching them twirl and swirl around the Ice Palace ballroom. Soon it was time to go, and once again Clara found herself shooting through the sky on the magical sleigh. After a while, they entered the land of sweets, and Clara peered down. What she saw was amazing. There were candy floss trees, milkshake rivers, and whole mountains made from cakes. They landed in front of a magnificent-looking castle. Clara could see cookie-filled walls and candy stick turrets. Surrounding the castle was a thick stream of melted chocolate. "Wow!" Clara cried. A gingerbread drawbridge lowered, and out danced a beautiful fairy dressed in purple and pink. "This is the Sugar Plum Fairy," the prince announced. "She's been expecting you, Clara." "Do you like dancing?" the Sugar Plum Fairy asked Clara as they all sat there rubbing their tummies. "Like it?" replied Clara. "I love it." "Wonderful," the fairy smiled, clapping her hands. Suddenly the castle hall was filled with exotic-looking dancers. First up were the Spanish chocolate castanets. Then came the coffee dance from Arabia, and Clara became hypnotized with their twirling movements. "Now for something really special," announced the Sugar Plum Fairy. Life-sized candy canes skipped onto the dance floor and began tapping and jigging to music from Russia. Clara clapped to the rhythm and laughed with the Nutcracker Prince. It was the best show she had ever seen. But it didn't stop there. There were gingerbread dancers, waltzing flower ballerinas, and candy flute players from Denmark. To end with, the Sugar Plum Fairy took to the floor herself and performed a dazzling solo dance, full of twists and turns and graceful spins. "Time to go," the Nutcracker Prince said, as the fairy finished her dance. It had been an incredible evening, and Clara thanked the Sugar Plum Fairy for inviting her to stay. Clara waved goodbye and climbed aboard the magical sleigh. Soon, she was soaring over the land of sweets again and into the snow-filled night. Clara felt sleepy, and she curled up close to the prince and closed her eyes. "Thank you for a magical Christmas Eve," she said. When Clara woke, she was lying on the sofa in her house. She looked at her hands. She was normal size again. She jumped down and peered beneath the Christmas tree. There were dozens of presents, and there, right where she had left him the night before, was her Nutcracker. She picked him up and cradled him in her arms. He was fixed. "It must have been a dream," she whispered to herself. Snow glistened outside, and Clara walked over to the window to get a better look. She trod on something strange and peered down. Scattered all over the floor were bits of old cheese and rotten fruit. "That's odd," she said, puzzled. Then she noticed a small note hanging from the Nutcracker. It read, "Dear Clara, I do hope the Nutcracker Prince saved you. Those mice can be awfully nasty. Merry Christmas. Love, Uncle." Clara's eyes widened and she took a sharp breath. Perhaps it wasn't a dream after all, she gasped, staring at her Nutcracker Prince. And do you know what? She could have sworn he winked back at her. This is the end of the story.